Hey, it's Marko here from Realty. Today I'm talking about how to make a decision as to whether to buy a parking spot or not when you're buying a condo. Sometimes the decision is really simple. You simply don't have any money. You buy the lowest price unit in the building without parking just to get into that building. Simple. Other times you have the adequate funds to buy a parking spot. You simply don't want the inconvenience of having to look for parking outside of the building. You don't want the inconvenience of trying to find someone within the building to rent from, and you buy a parking spot so you can park your car. Simple. But other times you have optional decisions as to whether you want to buy a parking spot or not. For example, you're buying a unit for investment, or you're buying a unit to live in. It comes with one parking spot where you're trying to evaluate whether to buy a second parking spot. The one thing you have to understand, well, there's a number of factors, but one factor you have to understand is the parking spot rental market. It's not an open market. For example, if you have a building downtown that has 60 parking spots and 120 units, so one parking spot for every 2 units, the market demand within that building is going to be very high for a parking spot. Those types of ratios, you're going to see rents anywhere from $200 to $300 a month for a parking spot. And the reason this is crucial, the ratio of parking spots to units, is because the vast majority of strata bylaws do not allow you to rent to someone outside of the building. So next door to the building I just described, you could have another building with 200 parking spots, 100 units, and you would barely get $50 a month for parking. The buildings are side by side. One building's renting $50 a month, the other building's $250 a month for parking. Why? Because you can only rent to people that have units or rent within that particular building. You cannot rent parking spots in condo stratas to people that don't live in the building. Some other factors to consider is, one I like to really consider is parking spots don't increase your strata fees. So if you buy a parking spot, it's a huge upfront cost, but there isn't really any associated extra costs that come with the parking spot other than the increased size of the mortgage. There's no strata fees or additional strata fees, and also BC Assessments is usually not aware that you have a parking spot or an extra parking spot, so your taxes are not higher either, your condo insurance is not higher, etc., etc. If you're buying an investment unit, one of the benefits I find in terms of parking, I have units with parking and units without parking that I rent out. The units with parking is just a bit easier to rent. Without parking, I always find I rent them out, but you always have to explain to people options in terms of city parking, renting from other people, etc. So basically, kind of the formula you have to run when you're thinking about buying parking is what's the ratio of parking spots to units in that building? Do you think the rents are going to be relatively high? The cost of the parking, obviously, and then factor in the fact that there is no additional cost in terms of strata fees, taxes, etc. when you do buy that parking spot. So sometimes the return on parking can actually be pretty decent because your only expense is the additional cost of the mortgage. That's it for this week. Marko, Juras, Realty.